Hello and welcome to part one of this two-part episode of The Inspired Attorney. I'm Sharon V, and in this episode we are speaking with Eugene Pettis. In part one of our conversation, Eugene shares with us how he actually came to become an attorney because, funnily enough, his initial career aspirations were quite different. We further talk about his experiences as Florida Bar President and what his greatest learnings were from this. And we touch on his Leadership Academy and what he and the Academy do to give attorneys the skills that they need to become successful and leaders. Hi, Eugene. Thank you for being a part of this episode of The Inspired Attorney.
My pleasure, Sharon. Happy to be here.
Happy to have you. So for our audience purposes, can you please introduce yourself?
I'm Eugene Pettis. I'm a lawyer here in South Florida, been practicing primarily in Fort Lauderdale for the last 35 years with my firm Haliczer, Pettis and Schwamm. We're civil litigators representing individuals in personal injury, medical malpractice, wrongful death, litigation for the most part, and native of Fort Lauderdale. So I'm fortunate to be back home.
That's awesome. And why did you decide to go into law?
That's an interesting story, a pretty funny story. When I was coming out of high school here in Fort Lauderdale, my brother was just finishing up dentistry. So wanting to follow behind my big brother's footsteps, I went to University of Florida as a pre-dent student, thinking that I was going to be a dentist. One of my longest memories is that my mom always told me, you need to be a lawyer because you talk so much. And as every typical child, I wanted to prove mom wrong. So I went to the University of Florida. I did 2 years of chemistry and calculus, and I hated it. It was not my bag. So I then somehow decided to go into environmental engineering. And I got into that college and I was saying, what am I doing here? I'm not an outdoor soil, air, water pollution type guy. And I said, let me go into political science. And I kind of found my way, and it was where I was supposed to be. I enjoyed the debate, the discussion, and my grades showed better for it. And I went on to law school, and I can't imagine doing anything other than the practice of law. So again, mom was right. As she told me all along, I needed to be a lawyer.
As they often are. What do you love about your job and what you do?
I think the law is one of the unique professions in that it gives you that so many opportunities to touch those things which I think are just important to humanity. One, it's a great profession to help others. When you find people with everything that has been taken away from them, a family that's been broken, you are one of the first people they trust to talk about their hurt and to seek some answers to what happened. I've spoken to people hours after losing a child, and it's an emotional process, but it's also a humbling process to be able to support someone through that unfortunate chapter of their life, to put them back together, help put their lives back together. So it touches you in that sense. I think if you're a lawyer and all you're doing is case to case, you're missing some of the most important journey. Beyond the courtroom is the opportunity to be a voice for the community, to really be one of the individuals that could articulate things that many people understand, believe, want to express, but don't have the confidence, as we as lawyers have been trained to have the confidence to speak, to put voice to power, and to get engaged with your community, to be one of those helping hands. And there's just so many of the great memories I've enjoyed over my 35 years that come not just from representing clients, but helping out in the community. And I don't think there's any profession that comes close to doing that like lawyers do. And I always believe that, but as bar president, when I traveled the country and traveled the state, going into every small town, some of which I'd never stopped in, every stop I met lawyers that were difference makers in their communities. And I think that's the true enjoyment. That's the wholeness of being a lawyer. You not only help people in their time of need, but you're that voice of leadership in the community. And that totality is second to none, in my opinion.
For sure. How do you deal with, because as an attorney, you're dealing with very heavy stuff. So how do you deal with that mentally?
You know, I've always been a pretty balanced individual. This morning I got up and I ran and walked 5.5 miles before coming into the office. So I like to get my physical exercise, but when I'm exercising, it's not just the body I'm working on. I have some of my clearest thoughts in the morning while I'm walking. I write speeches sometime. I'm dictating in my phone ideas. I gave a commencement speech, virtual commencement speech yesterday to a middle school. I wrote it on the road, just listening to motivational pieces, spiritual songs, just putting myself in that moment where I tap into my inner being. And so that all puts me in a very balanced place at the beginning of my day. I stress out like everyone does, but it keeps me somewhat balanced, that I take a little time for myself to renew myself before I get my day started. And whether it's with exercise or just meditation, I try to do that every day at some point during the course of my day.
For sure. I am in complete agreement that how we start our day, and it's very important to just kind of start your day for yourself and then let everything else pile on after you've had that moment.
Certainly.
Let's touch on your work as Florida Bar President. What inspired you to, one, run for Florida Bar President?
Well, I was asked to consider getting on the Board of Governors back in 2005 when the late Henry Latimer untimely passed away in an auto accident. He was an icon and a mentor to many. When I got on the board in 2005, I learned more and more and more about our profession. And then it starts clicking in your mind that I think I can bring something to the table. I think I can lift up the charge of being on the Board of Governors to a new high. So I started thinking it through, talking to people, and believing it was my time to step up to leadership. And it was a long undertaking of several years of building up to your opportunity. But it was simply on the modest hope that I could bring something to the leadership of the profession and to broaden the opportunity for all of us to be better individuals, first and foremost, and better lawyers. And that was the calling that brought me to run for the, fortunately I was prepared to run, but nobody ran against me, which is even better. But to step up, and was selected as the president of the bar. And I served in 2013 and 14.
What was one of your takeaways or one of your biggest learnings from that experience?
I touched upon it a little earlier. In sincerity, the biggest takeaway is the amazing work that lawyers do in this country. I think it's oftentimes taken for granted. Lawyers are in many occasions the butt of a lot of jokes. I think that people believe wrongly that all lawyers are out for greed. I have spoken in the highest quarters of the state on the society as we know it would not be here but for lawyers standing up for justice, standing up for individual rights, standing up, simple things just as far as seatbelts in cars. They didn't put seatbelts in cars because they wanted to. It cost them another $5. They didn't want to spend $5 to put seatbelts, but lawyers stepped up and the industry had to be held accountable. You can go through every aspect of our lives, and it's the battle between industry wanting to do what they are in position to do, and that's profit for the most part. Many times when they're public entities answering to stockholders, and many times that does not take into consideration what's safe for society. And there is no profession that speaks up to that other than lawyers. And the ability to go into courtrooms and throughout the state of Florida and across the country, lawyers willing to jeopardize everything to stand up for what's right. And that's in every aspect of our democracy, in our society, across the world, is the role of lawyers. And we are fortunate here in this country that we're not taken out like some countries and silenced or killed. In the United States, while there's battles and there are challenges, we have a platform. The question is, do we step up and speak up? Truth to justice, truth to power. And I think I was heartened by, my heart was overjoyed by seeing how many lawyers from the smallest town to the largest town, from the biggest firms to the solo practitioners, that have properly dedicated their lives and put their heart in the right place. And they're doing what's right for the community. And that was the most humble takeaway, that I had selected the correct profession, and it's a noble profession in my opinion.
Amazing words. I love the way you put that. It's truly inspirational. You have a lot of community involvement, and I know that you were a part of founding the William Reece Smith Leadership Academy. Can you talk to us a little bit about that and why you started it?
Certainly. It was started during I had the idea. I remember it was a Sunday. I was sitting on my couch and I traveled the state many times over. I met a lot of lawyers, thousands of people at different events leading into my president-elect year, which was 12-13. And I just felt that there was something missing. Why are some lawyers elevating here and others are not? Why are some bar associations so successful and others are not? And I came to the conclusion that I think there are some core skills that are necessary, not just to win a case, but to be successful, to be a good advocate, to be a good citizen of the community. And those are the ability to communicate, number one, the ability to have strategic planning skills, the ability to network, the ability to be creative and frame an issue. And it goes on and on and on. So if we've gone through law school and we have not picked up those skills, where are we going to learn those skills? Do we leave it to just chance that some of them get it and many don't? I think that's too important of task, too important of skills to leave to chance. So we've been talking about diversity and inclusion for decades. There have been some gains in that area of inclusion, but I think to have lasting impact, people have to know how to compete in that space in order to have lasting. You can have a program, and as long as the program is there, you may prop up some opportunities. But once the program is no longer there, if they are not adapt with the skills, everything falls away. So have you truly made gains? I thought that it was necessary to train people up with the skills to compete. So I thought of a leadership academy. I was told, no way, you can't do it, it won't work, which just fuels my fire even more. We're now just announced the 8th class of the Leadership Academy. Hundreds of lawyers have come through. I get emails. I got 2 this week. A young man is up before the governor for judgeship who was in one of the academy classes. We have like 10 judges. One just got elected without opposition on May 1st, called me literally in tears that she would have never been able to do it but for the Leadership Academy. I've heard that story so many times, and I've heard it from a number of people say it gave me confidence. It told me I can do it. That's the vision that I had, that I wanted to open up the opportunity gates. I wanted to open up the table of opportunity to give people the skill to peek under the cover. It makes me think of the Wizard of Oz. As long as the wizard was behind the curtain, we were all, fearful of the wizard. But once you kind of lift up the curtain, you saw that he was just a man. Many times people are not competing at the highest level because they don't believe they can. They need to see it ain't that hard. You're just as good as anybody else. You're just as smart as anyone else. And the way you learn that is that you put them in the arena. And once you're in the arena, however you want to define the arena, wow, I could do this. I'm just as able as the next person that's been propped up, the wizard behind the curtain, that he's the only person that can be the leader. You see, as a young female, I can do this. Now you're attacking life with confidence. You now know how to navigate the network of society. And it's all about network. So the Leadership Academy introduces you to the network that you know people from the Supreme Court through the legislature, through the bar, you know, leadership. You have opportunities to be introduced and create relationships. And now you're playing in the game. All the other stuff is just noise. If you're not in that game, you're not in the arena. And the Leadership Academy and the curriculum was intentionally designed to take the curtain down, to expose more people to this opportunity, and to target people that would not have otherwise had the opportunity, to level the playing field, to open up doors. And that's women, minorities, as broad as we can define it, racially, demographically, practice areas, you name it. Veterans that have just don't know their way, have served our country, have studied into our schools and are in our profession, but they're not in the clique. They're not in the firms that are the pipelines into the opportunities. It takes you back to University of Florida days where the fraternities had a pipeline. And if you were in the fraternity or the sorority, you had opportunities. But if you were not, it was not a natural process. I've always been one to want to open up the opportunity. And despite people's fears, there's enough for us all. There's enough for us all to enjoy a fruitful, whole life. And nobody's going to go hungry. No, you know, that's the fear factor kicks into why people want to keep people out, is because they fear that they'll have to give up something. Well, we have so much bounty here in this country that if you give up a little bit, you're still going to do pretty good. And it's that was the genesis of the vision of the Leadership Academy, and it just spoke to what I have as a personal philosophy of what you're supposed to do with this short time we have on this earth. And that is to open it up and to lift some other people to your level. I was getting ready to come on as president of the bar in 2013, about 3 months before. And I was at an ABA meeting in Dallas, Texas. And I met Dennis Archer. Dennis Archer was the first African-American president of the American Bar Association. He was a justice of the Michigan Supreme Court. He's a superstar lawyer, and it was my first time meeting him. And we talked for 15 minutes in the hallway. And I'm a believer that God puts you in place where you are supposed to learn some lessons and meet some people for your journey. And I was getting ready to walk away. I said, it was a pleasure meeting you. And he said, before you leave, and this was the teaching moment, this is why we came to be together in that hallway. I thought it was for me to meet Dennis Archer for the first time, but it was for him to leave me with this message. And he said, what's your dominant hand? And I said, I'm right hand dominant. And he said, as you continue to climb the ladder of success, I want you to pull yourself up by your left hand. I want you to reach back and lift others with your dominant best hand. And that's a twist on our natural instincts. Our natural instincts are to use our best for ourselves. And if we have anything left, we may help someone else. Most times we've used it all up for ourselves and our own expectations of what we need. But if you think about it, if we use our best for somebody else, we're going to find out a couple of things. We are always going to have enough for ourselves. And secondly, that's how we lift people up in society, using our best opportunity, our best resources, our best time to lift some others up. And that's just a philosophy that I embodied from the moment I heard it. I've given hundreds of speeches as bar president. There's nothing I've ever said that resonates more across the spectrum of humanity. I remember an old judge in Gainesville coming up to me and saying, "Young man, that was a powerful statement you made." To the youngest person, it's powerful. I've had people to come up to me across the state and say, "You said this," and I've used it before. I was speaking over in Fort Myers earlier this year, and a lady came up to me and she said, "I just want to tell you, I'll never forget those words." It's that statement that I have said. Out of all the stuff I've tried to stay up all night thinking to say, those words resonate. Therefore, I move it forward because that's what the Leadership Academy is. Let's pause. Let's not think we as leaders know how to do it, and therefore we don't need more people into the arena. Let's open this thing up. Let's teach people how to be leaders, and they may not be bar leaders. They may go on and be in their community. They go wherever they want. They take an informed skill, an enhanced skill of how to be the best lawyer, citizen, advocate they can be. And that's the winning recipe for the Leadership Academy.
Incredible, extremely powerful. I am in complete agreement with what you say, because I think that what we need to do is add the most value. And that's exactly what you're doing. And there's more than enough for everybody.
More than enough.
What do you think that, like, if you were to go back to law school, what would be one of the things that you would say you wish you were better prepared for?
Well, when I was in law school, I date myself a little bit. We didn't have computers. We didn't have the intellectual property was not a topic. And I made a couple of bad decisions in life. I made a really bad one that I paid for, and I still pay for it. When I was a senior in high school at Strennan High School here in Fort Lauderdale, I had typing on my curriculum, and I said, I'm not going to learn to type as a senior, and I dropped it because I don't need typing, and I dropped it. I have paid many dollars in law school to have people type papers for me. Fortunately, with all the advent of doing it all day long, I've become a decent typer. But technology, it's just changed the world. It's changed the profession. And I would spend more time really studying technology. Yourself with this podcast or Zoomcast that you're doing is, think how great society is that you can come up with your idea and make it happen with technology that's readily available. We've seen through this coronavirus shutdown how we've stayed connected using technology that was there yesteryear, but we didn't use it. Now we've seen a use for it, and I think it's going to transform society, connectivity, and it'll never go back to the way we were disconnected, and many families were disconnected when it was right there in your hand, free, that you could have seen each other's faces and connected emotionally through picture. I think those things have endless opportunities to do a lot of the work that we're talking about, but to connect people, connect us with clients differently than we've ever done it before. So technology would be the thing I spend more time learning about, and I still study it today, trying to become more proficient. But that would be what I look to.
Do you believe that technology is one of our greatest takeaways or positives out of this whole coronavirus situation?
I think there are two things that are paramount in my mind. I think technology, the better use of technology is certainly one of them. I think connectivity with those that you care about is one of them. One of the most painful scenes that I've seen, and I know someone who's now has their father in the hospital and they can't see them. I've lost my mother and father, but they lived right, mom died at 90. I was there to that moment to think about your parents transitioning and you can't be there with them is heartbreaking. And people are doing it each and every day. That leaves open a chapter that I don't know how you close that. You can't have a burial. You can't be there with them to hold their hands through their struggles. That's a hurt that people are experiencing, but technology can allow that to never happen again. We should have rooms equipped with the simple technology, but we have to change all that we do. That needs to be a part of someone's job to, if you're going to shut it down, to be able to open it up through technology. And it's not being done effectively now. I know from personal experiences of one of my partners who they've just not gotten the response that you think would be readily available. But when we shut down, you found out what's important. And sometimes what's important is in a much smaller box than what we struggle to participate in each and every day. So I think with the shutdown, it also simplified life. And that's where we probably should be. We spend a lot of energy, in my opinion, I do, we all do, chasing that which at the end of life is not that important. And when you're shut down as we were, it simplifies. And as the old Hamilton story goes, I hope you have enough. We found out where enough lived, and hopefully we can use that as a guide for the rest of our lives.
I think that's an incredible learning from this whole thing. Thank you for watching. Please drop your key insights and takeaways from the first part of this conversation with Eugene Pettis into the comments below. Also, follow me or subscribe to my channel so you can be notified when part 2 of this conversation is released. And as always, if you are seeking further strategic guidance, do not hesitate to reach out to me. I have 2 complimentary offers available to you, so utilize the link I've provided in the information below to also reach out to me. I'm looking forward to seeing you guys on the next episode.